Hey everyone. So today we have a very special guest. His name is Prashant. And if you had to describe Prashant, and there's many ways to describe him, but if you had to describe him and what he's doing in India and eventually the whole entire world, he's making healthcare accessible and affordable. And I think it's based upon he has three pillars that his company, which is called 1MG, and he himself, and he will obviously elaborate more, that he stands upon. Three pillars are his foundation, which is transparency, authenticity, and access. And those are the three things that he's providing for healthcare, and the three things that I believe he himself is. And he's making an absolute true revolution. And I'm very excited to have him here on the show. I'm very excited to have him here and share his story with us. Prashant, thank you so much for coming to join us.
It's my pleasure. Thanks for having me here.
Sure, it's a real pleasure. So let's jump right in and let's figure out what your story is. Take us on this journey back to where you're from, which city you're from, and your upbringing, to what led you all the way to now. So which city are you from?
I grew up in New Delhi, in India. And so that's where my childhood was, where I went to school and also college. So studied at IIT Delhi, did my engineering there. 2002 is when I left Delhi.
That's nice. So what was your upbringing like as a child? I mean, New Delhi is back, 20, 30 years ago. What was it like?
Yeah, it was a very interesting phase to grow up, I think. So I came from a family of professionals, very much a middle class upbringing. My father used to work in an engineering firm of the government. It's called Engineers India Limited. My mother was a teacher, and then after a while she was a homemaker. I have one sister, and it was a very nice phase to be growing up. And I think what's also important to realize is when we were growing up, the rate at which India changed was very interesting. When we were small, we did not have cable TV, we did not have full-time electricity, power, water. Getting a telephone connection would take 2 years or more. Very few people had cars. So this is a very different world. Come the 90s, liberalization happened, and suddenly so many more things were accessible to us. And I think we got to see many different, because if you look at India, I think from independence 47 till 91, it was a reasonably static situation, and 91 was a step change where liberalization happened, FDI would come, all the foreign brands would come into India. So we were at that transition. And then as I was graduating out from my engineering, the next transition happened, the internet boom. So sudden connection happened, and now we are seeing the digital explosion, so to speak. So I think growing early in late 70s, early 80s was a phase which was very unique, and just the people of my age would have seen so many transitions in lives so far.
Yeah. So people of your age are obviously not taking things for granted. See the cars, everything that you have in India. So. And yeah, we lost you for a second there.
Yeah. No, sorry.
No worries.
I think it's the connect.
Yes.
Yeah.
So let me ask you, how are you educating your children for them to understand what it was like when you're growing up, like, so they should be able to appreciate everything they have now?
I wonder if they will ever be able to appreciate what we were dealing with at that point. It was just very different. Because I think, but the fundamental thing is, I think in my family, what was always true is education and learning was super important. And everyone in my extended family, in fact, I am the first person in all my extended family who is doing a business. Everyone else was a doctor, engineer, lawyer, architect, and the likes. So so I am the outlier in that sense. And for my family, it was very important to, I think there was a very strong value-based upbringing, which holds true across at all points in time. And then, yes, the resources were limited and you had to appreciate what you got. And I think uh, it's a challenge in current, when I think we live in a time of abundance, and now the needs are a higher level, so to speak. So, but yes, fundamental values should be there of appreciating what you got and where you come from.
True. So you were the real rebel in your family, you know. So, so you obviously you graduated from IIT, and then
Yeah.
you went ahead. You went to Stanford.
Mm-hmm. In between, I spent 3 years working with Unilever in India. So
Oh,
there was a very important phase of my life, I would say.
the data. Wow. So, but let's go to Stanford part. What made you
Sure.
go ahead to travel to America to go experience American University?
So I think I was, so as I mentioned, after that I was working with Unilever and got a very good exposure to the corporate world and a high quality multinational. Um, and I think at that point the aspiration grew. I felt my role was pan Asia anyway. I was working across cultures, across geographies, and it is fairly clear to me that I could shoot for whatever I want, and why not go for the best? So I wanted to, and I wanted to get into business. I was very, very keen on getting into uh, more of a corporate business role, and uh, went into Stanford with that. And when I went in, I never wanted to be, or never thought of being an entrepreneur, but it was really about being in one of the best places, getting one of the best degrees for business that one could find. And I applied to all the top schools in Stanford. I made it, so it was pretty easy then. So it wasn't, and I think I have to accept that during our times, the level of exposure or understanding was actually fairly limited. I went in with not the most nuanced understanding of what I was going for. It was much more that this is something the world is uh, talking about, that this is awesome, so it must be good. So went there, got lucky that the world was right, that it is a special place. But by I think the level of knowledge and understanding that people today have at an early age, growing up we did not have that kind of clarity of what is the path we want to take.
Right. Well, first of all, there's no Google growing up, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Immediately at your tips. But I love that lesson what you just said. You know, we only live life once. So if we only
Yeah.
live once, might as well shoot for the best and aim for the best for every single thing that we do. You know,
Yeah.
don't take the middle level, middle ground.
Yeah.
So you go to Stanford, you graduate Stanford, and after
Yeah.
Stanford, you get this job, obviously at McKinsey,
Mm-hmm.
and you're there for 2.5 years, and then eventually you come back to India.
That's correct.
What made you return back to India after having, you know, you have a very lucrative career in the USA, you're working for McKinsey.
Mm-hmm.
Why return?
So I think fundamentally there are a couple of things. One, I felt the opportunity was actually growing in India, very important. So I came back in 2009, and just for context, 2008 is when the world collapsed in the US. And 2009 was a very interesting phase, like from end 2008 to mid 2009. Was very slow in the US. Even when I left, it wasn't really a very exciting time to be in the US. So from the US perspective, things were getting dull and boring. From the India perspective, there was growth. And in fact, from my Stanford class, around 4 or 5 non-Indians were in India doing startups. And I was like, clearly, I should be where the action is, and it's my home ground. Like, why am I not where the opportunity is? That was one. The other was, of course, family, and just personally, I felt India was where I feel I'm operating at my best, and I'm close to family, and parents are growing old. So I just personally also wanted to be closer there. And the third part was, for me, it was very clear that if I were to build a big company, and then the opportunity that India presents and the understanding of that market that I have is where my edge is. In the US, it was not uh, intuitive to me as to what problem am I solving, because most of I think the inherent familiarity with India was way deeper, and in India the problems are much more, I would say, obvious and stark, that you don't have to be too smart to appreciate or find the problem. I knew these are the problems that need to be solved, and maybe I can go and address one of them.
So wow. So was healthcare your first issue when you came back? Was that the first issue you wanted to tackle?
So while at McKinsey, I was doing a lot of healthcare work, and healthcare was clearly one of those spaces where we knew that India has to significantly evolve and change in the way healthcare delivery is happening. We came with a thesis, and the first company that we set up in the healthcare technology space, we came with a broader thesis that we have to jump in. Samir was my co-founder. Well, healthcare technology is going to be fundamentally changing in India, and we had the benefit of not having a legacy system. US at that time was going through a lot of interoperability and digitization and all that stuff, and we felt India will follow at some point. And India's strength is we don't have legacy software to so we can just leapfrog and go with the next big thing there. Didn't turn out that way. So it turned out to be the first venture or the first idea we came back with did not really fly. But we spent one good year working with doctors and patients in the community. And I think that's where we learned the most. And the next two ventures came out of that experience.
Right. So obviously, like that, yeah. So that first venture was where you, like you mentioned, your experience and education came for in order to establish the other two, which was Health Cards and 1MG.
That's correct.
So take us back to, your first venture failed. What was your, I guess, not your emotions, your feelings, your attitude toward it all? What were you feeling? Were you demoralized? Were you
It was the first time that we had tried something and it didn't work out. So first experience of a little bit of disappointment. But I think we were in a mode that we had come with a little bit of understanding that we'll have to try a few things before we figure it out. And so that we were running out of our cash flows also, so the savings were down or almost gone. So, but we knew that we had committed ourselves to spending at least 2 years trying to figure it out. So we were in that zone that okay, this thing is not working. Then is there a next thing we want to try? And so it turned out that we felt that there was at least one other problem in the healthcare space, which was access to healthcare products, which was still looking like worth trying out. So we attempted to solve that with the health card, and that actually took off pretty well and gave us a lot of confidence and encouragement.
So let me ask like this: what did you tell your parents? Your parents obviously saw you come back from Stanford. Tremendous. I'm assuming you probably had a tremendous amount of student loans. Then you had this sales startup. What did you tell your parents when you was like, "Okay, Dad and Mom, we're working on another startup"? What what did they say?
My parents were very happy that I was back. I think they were expecting me to never return to India, probably, or that's what their thought process was. So the fact that I was back at home was good enough a reason. And I think again, I'm this conjecture, but I think they had enough confidence that I'll figure something out, and if nothing works, I have enough degrees to get a decent job if I need. That they weren't too worried. In fact, while we were moving from closing down the first venture and starting the other, I actually got married in that face. So more than parents, it's more about how was my wife, what was she thinking?
She didn't know what she signed up for. Huh?
So yeah, I think it's just she took the bet also that this things will figure itself out. Or they did.
I think one thing that we always miss, especially when we're doing the startup journey, is how much appreciation we need to have for the people that support us, especially our spouse. If we're in a relationship, the people that are together with us, how much they go.
Of course.
We have to show them support. Because at the end of the day, we are coming home at night, and they're there to cheer us up. We have to. It's just there's no way to describe how much appreciation we need to have for them, especially more than anyone else.
Absolutely. So if either of those variables were not in sync, I would have given up, of course. If my family was putting pressure, or my parents were not supportive, my wife would have put her foot down that all this nonsense is now done and go get a job, then it would have been very, very hard. It would have been very, very hard because anyway, you are trying to deal with a lot of uncertainty, and then you add additional pressure. I think.
Oh, there you go. Perfect. Wow. So she should be the face of the company of 1MG, I think. Put her there. She should be the CEO. And you start launching the second venture, which has obviously become Health Card. Through Health Card, obviously became 1MG. And I think a lot of things, you're going to share with us in a second, is that you never planned on 1MG becoming a massive business that what it is today. It just started off as a place to provide people and give people access to the data about medicine.
Correct.
And
correct.
And eventually it became what it is today. And I think that's a common denominator between a lot of entrepreneurs. And I'd love to hear your opinion about this. Is that no one starts off, okay, how am I going to make $1 million? How am I going to grow this into a $1 billion company? It's more about how they're either passionate about a cause, or they find some way that their life is not the way they want it to be. They want to fix it and fix their head along something. Or it's the fact that they want to do something together with a bunch of their friends and let's try something out. And I think that's one of the ways that 1MG became about. In fact, take us back to the story of founding of 1MG.
Okay, so 1MG was an initiative started within Health Card. It used to be called Health Card Plus when we launched it in 2012. And it was a transparency initiative because while working with doctors, again, it came out of the so-called failure, but that was the seed of everything pretty much. While working with doctors, we created a database of all the medicines sold in India because none existed. We wanted to give them a quick reference tool. When we were making that database, we realized that there was a very fundamental anomaly in the Indian market. Indian market, more than 90% is of off-patent molecules called generics. Now, within that, for every generic, like in the US, you would have one brand and then a Walgreens or CVS would offer a generic version. In India, every pharma company offers a brand of the same generic. So it's a branded generics market. And for the same commodity salt, there are more than 100 companies trying to sell it. And more often than not, one of the more expensive companies is the market leader. So a consumer can easily save almost 60-70% of their medicine bill if only they would know that there's an alternative brand possible, and if they could access that. Now, the problem in the market, what was the inefficiency, was the consumers had no idea. Healthcare one is almost from the beginning, you are conditioned to think that you should just follow. You should never apply your mind onto that. But here is a market with commodity products. India is a market without insurance, so 100% out of pocket. People really care about medicine prices. And for these products, they can easily save 60, 70, 80%. And the only reason it's not happening is because pharma companies and doctors are basically having a very convenient setup where the consumers don't have a voice. So the problem, fundamental thing was that the transparency was not there. So we thought at the very least, let the consumer know and have a conversation with their doctor that is it okay that instead of brand A, I take brand B and save 40, 50, 60%? Maybe the doctor says yes, maybe no, but at least the consumer should have that conversation. And with technology, it was so easy to create, and we already had the database. Mobile apps were just getting started in India. So in some sense, I did it just for kicks. I just wanted that the consumers should have an idea that you can save a lot of your medicine bills just by talking to the doctor if one of those alternative brands would work for you. And so we put it out there. And what we actually touched upon was a very raw nerve that India was going through a very interesting transition where the trust deficit between the patient and the healthcare ecosystem has been increasing and increasing. And to us, that was very, very obvious that the patients are feeling that they are being cheated and they're looking for information and they're looking for some control over healthcare. And it's played out exactly the way we felt that this would, and it's not good for the ecosystem where in hospitals now doctors are not feeling secure. Patients are having fights with doctors, all of that, but the system really needed to get into a much more balanced state, and the consumers needed information of some quality, which is what we provided. So when we launched this app, it was a very simple app that for this medicine, you can get your side effects, interactions, whatever, and you can figure out how you can save 60, 70% on your medicine bill. This thing went absolutely viral, and people to people, it was more than the quality of the product, it was the message that stuck. People were, so before we knew, this became India's largest health app, and without us spending a penny on trying to market it. So just complete virality that this is a great service to society. Every consumer must be aware. You must talk to your doctor before you take your medicine. Why should you not take a cheaper brand if it is available? And etc. etc. People created WhatsApp messages in multiple languages, and we saw that, oh, we are onto something very, very special. That this thing had almost 50 times more downloads than our main business, which was the second largest health app of the country. So this was going in the millions, and when the rest of the ecosystem was in thousands. That was the kind of thing we saw.
Wow. So I actually saw a few of those WhatsApp messages. I actually found them. I looked them over.
Oh, you did?
Yes.
Okay.
No?
Yeah. We had no role in creating that. It was just some user somewhere who did. That's pretty interesting.
That's actually like, you are the real story of a company of growth in the sense that, you created something that people wanted. You didn't spend a dime on marketing. You didn't need to. It came from the user itself because you created something that they wanted. That's amazing. I could only imagine the pushback you probably had from all the big brands and companies in the beginning when you started providing information that they didn't want people to have.
Yeah, no, so the good thing is that when anything like this happens, in the first phase is of people, especially when it comes to healthcare, people like to live in a world of denial that healthcare is different, it will never change. Consumers will never ask these questions, and it operates a certain way that is different. And to my thing, to me, my mind, the difference was very clearly of information. Now, when I need my healthcare, even back then, I would ask all the questions. I would go prepared with that, okay, this is the situation. Why am I being given this treatment? I would have a very good conversation with my doctor, which is actually, I think the doctors also enjoy a good conversation because I go informed with information. And I was like, why? I would not be, if the doctor is sending me somewhere that to get tests done or to get a surgery done that I don't need, I would ask 100 questions before I accept that. But that is not what the average consumer in the country is That's not his or her interaction with healthcare. And what's the difference? Difference is that I have information. I have informed myself. So I was like, let people have that information. Let them have an informed conversation. And that's probably important to change healthcare.
Like they say, information is king.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
Tell me about this. So as you formed this app, and this app obviously grew, right now it's holding at 9 million plus downloads, 20 million plus active users.
That's all grown, those numbers, but yes, that's fine.
Oh, wow. Even that's a tremendous amount.
We are around 14 million downloads right now, and monthly around 45 to 50 million sessions.
Oh, wow. Do you check the metrics every day?
I do. At least every month. So that's the core of it. I think if consumers keep coming to our app as the gold standard for information, then rest of the business model follows. I think if we are loved by and trusted by consumers, then that is core. So I do track that very intently. So
let's say, for example, like this, let's say, for example, another startup in another industry, but a startup is based upon which is like yours, which needs the trust of the consumer.
Yeah.
How do you go about building that trust with the consumer that they can rely on you for the right information?
It's a very, very good question. I think there's no shortcut is the simple answer. It's about doing everything the right way over a period of time. That trust has to be earned. There's no shortcut. You can get excitement going by doing some tactics, but building trust is basically the design of your company. You have to make sure that every interaction that the user has with your company builds trust, whether it is the information that they are getting from the platform, whether it is the messaging they are hearing from when they meet people from the company, whether they are calling customer service, whether it is the delivery of their healthcare products and services. Everything needs to work. And I think they also form a view about how this company as an entity, how are they thinking. So brands get created over a period of time, and brands are not created by just advertising campaigns. It's just it's a process. It's very easy to lose. It's very, very easy to lose it, and there's no shortcut. At least I haven't found a shortcut to building trust. But I've seen both in HealthCart also always stood for authenticity and trust, and so did 1mg. But it is about continuing to not take shortcuts and continue doing everything the right way, patiently, and let things compound. It's beautiful when things compound.
So if that's the way how you go about the consumer part, so how's it internally within you and your employees? What's the culture like at 1mg?
So I think we take we believe we have a lot of responsibility because we see so many consumers use 1mg. I think in some sense we are very much a mission-based organization that people feel proud of what they are doing. Almost all of our management team is intact. People are very. I think people are finding purpose in their work. Of course, you'll have to talk to them to get their view on that. But I think in general, people feel that this is an opportunity that is once in a lifetime kind of a thing, and the impact is actually real because every day, real time, you hear stories of people. So people write on social media, they write people, our employees, when they go out into their own community, then they tell people what they do, and they get goodwill, and it all rubs off. So people feel proud about that. We stand for something in what has been a pretty messy sector. We stand for doing things the right way. So that's at least that'll be my belief that it's something that does rub off well, and the culture is of being aware of the responsibility we have right now. So.
Wow. Which is a tremendous responsibility. The fact you're changing the way people look at healthcare in India. You know,
Yeah.
have you ever got a chance to look back and see the accomplishment that you've done? You know, you've raised $80+ million. You have 1,000+ employees. You're affecting the lives of who knows how many millions. Have you ever like sat down and like look back and like what you have accomplished and built?
No, I think those are we do every year on our anniversary and everything. We look back on where we have come, and we feel grateful to be in this situation. But I think for we've barely begun in most ways. Like that, right now we are just kind of trying to make a better model happen for a few consumers. We live in a country of 1.3 billion people. We are way away from actually changing the model of healthcare. We are just trying to make some parts of it a little more efficient right now, and making the consumers a little more aware, and giving them at least one platform where some of them feel that they can trust it. But I think those are two parts. One, every year when we look back at where we come, we feel immensely thankful and grateful that things have been working out pretty well. And we have stuck to our fundamental principles and still managed to grow very well in this sector. But it also brings the fact that we're barely scratching this surface right now. And there's so much that needs to be done, and there's a little bit of impatience, but certainly a lot of excitement also that we're very much a startup, and there's so much we need to accomplish.
Like you said, there's no shortcuts. It has to happen. It has to grow. You know, and it has to come from the consumer side too. But from the internally, it's got to work hard, continue plugging away.
You know?
Yep. Well, let me ask like this: so as your company grew, you know, obviously, you know, you had the business school knowledge. You've worked for corporations, but doing your own startup, it's just a totally different boat. You know, how did you grow with the knowledge, or what knowledge did you need to educate yourself along the way to grow as your company grew? You know, hiring, firing, managing. What type of knowledge you need to go, and how'd you go about it?
I think all of these things. When you're running the show, then the challenges are clearly nothing that you learn in any setting. You're just, I think. But what really helps you is whatever has been. I think everything about your growing up and upbringing plays a role. Whether it's your parents, your teachers, your formal education, your management education, your first job, your bosses, there's that. So I think everything plays a role, and at the end of it, you're back to first principles. So you're like, okay, these are problems. I don't know. I haven't solved a lot of these problems that I'm going to deal with, but let's take a crack at it and hope it works. So I think there's, again, at least I didn't come across a formula. Some problems are easy, like, of course, after you've gone through your business school and consulting and all, drawing up a P&L and figuring out how to balance the balance sheet and all that stuff is okay. But the human problems, the interpersonal things, it's life experiences that kind of enable you to do that. I think one of the areas where which I had fundamental contribution in, this was my first job actually, when I was running a factory shop floor in Unilever. Is that also is one of those situations where you're thrown into the fire and you have to take decisions on the fly. And I think when you come to entrepreneurship, there are so many things that you have no idea what, and there is no solution per se. There's no playbook. So you go to stick to first principles. Generally, I think every entrepreneur would have some set of perspectives or values that they would like to operate with, and then hope that it doesn't backfire. So that's kind of the random path to take.
That is so true. So many important topics you spoke about. You know, it's like the question is EQ more important than IQ. You know, and that's a whole separate discussion. But such an important thing you mentioned, knowing how to do balance sheets is very, you know, so great. But at the end of the day, it's all about how managing and how you interact with people. So let's go into a few quick questions over here. What books do you recommend for another entrepreneur to go ahead and read? I'm assuming, I'm not sure if you have a lot of time to read or not, but what book do you think that made a difference in your life that another you think should be a foundation for other people to go ahead and read?
I think in general people should read just to build perspective, and so again I think while just specific to entrepreneurship, I would say The Hard Things About Hard Things was I found it pretty much spot on. A lot of problems or challenges, but so certainly I think I could appreciate everything in that book pretty well. Liked it a lot, but I think everybody should just read to build perspective, and when you are looking to solve complex problems, that is what will come in handy. So I read I really enjoyed reading Sapiens, Shoe Dog. So I think that's the kind of genre that if I have to give 3 recommendations, it would be these 3.
These are 3 incredible books, absolutely amazing books. So,
yeah.
Which entrepreneurs do you say that you look up to, are your mentors that you go to for advice?
So I think depending on the kind of situation that you deal with, that in the Indian ecosystem, I am in touch with a bunch of guys. I think I do respect quite a few of them for different reasons. If I have to pick one, I would say Deep Kalra of Make My Trip. So I think is a very good guy to speak with. He understands. He's been through the journey, and he's a genuinely smart and helpful guy. So that would be my go-to guy.
Wow, that's incredible. Now let's ask another thing. I've seen you do a bunch of talks. I know you go around and speak a lot. Within India and outside India, you do a lot of different other conversations. Let's say an entrepreneur wants to get a hold of you, either to pick your brain or ask advice, or if you do seed investments, anything like that. How would they go about getting a hold of you if you have time?
I think all channels. I'm generally accessible. Having said that, it has to be somewhat relevant, but otherwise, a lot of people reach out through LinkedIn. People reach out through email. They find me in some event or the other. So there are different channels of connecting with me, and if I can, I do make time to talk to. One thing I actually always do is I read every email I get and every message I get. So I may not respond to every email I get. So at least if I find the message to be compelling or something that I can be of some actual value to, then I would respond. Otherwise, I would just let it pass. Because again, you get at least 100 a week kind of messages on people trying different things. But then you also need to see where can you be helpful, because most of them are just asking for angel investment. And that is something for which is an easier decision to make looking at the plan. If people are asking genuinely for some advice or help, then it just depends on if I feel I am in a position to be of help there. So,
right.
Just today I spent 20 minutes advising one of the new entrepreneurs who was raising his first round on how to think through the term sheet and all that stuff. So those are things I can certainly help somebody who hasn't done it before kind of thing. But so it depends what I can be helpful for.
That's amazing. So not only are you making a revolution in the healthcare system in India, you're also helping the ecosystem and the startup ecosystem and growing that too. Since you're one of the early pioneers, from this past decade of entrepreneurs. It's incredible.
In a very little manner. I won't take anything. See, I'll be honest. I do it because I enjoy it. So it's very, very selfish. I enjoy being in touch with young, new, exciting ideas. And so in that sense, whatever I find exciting, I spend time on. So it's just it's just personally I enjoy and I have fun with it. It's if it does any service to anybody, that's just that good. I get a good feeling of it, but it's not my primary intent here.
It's okay to be selfish in this sense, Giving is always
Yeah,
selfish to a certain degree.
yeah. So why not?
So let's finish this off, 'cause I know it's late by you. I know you have your kids waiting. So, like, how do you balance? I know work-life balance doesn't exist.
Uh-huh.
How do you go about and do it between your kids, your wife, and your business, which is also like your kid?
Yeah. So I think I don't feel the pressure of having to balance. One, yeah, it is a continuum, but I think I'm, uh, for me, I have my weekends. So I'm in some sense I have full control, and I am always available on at least family and work. These two dimensions, I'm always available. So in that sense, I'm a 24/7 guy in both these zones wherever I'm needed. So when I wake up, I spend time with my kids. When I come back before they go to sleep. I might be doing a few calls after they sleep. Um, Me and my wife, evenings, we are always, I'm at home pretty much every evening. We go out, and I take quite a few vacations, and I don't feel that my life is out of balance. What helps also is I have an incredibly solid team, so I don't now at least need to uh, get into doing a lot of things that otherwise in the very early stages would be my problem. But I think the team is good. It's high quality, and it takes care of most of the regular stuff. So I'm there when I'm needed. So that's
Perfect.
Life is very balanced.
You have the work-life harmony, So like
Yeah.
it interacts together. It's good at work, good at home, good at home, good at work. It goes together. It's perfect.
Yeah. If I were smarter, I would have used that terminology that it's work life. But yeah, it is in harmony. I don't feel the pressure.
That's incredible. Wow. So Prashant,
Again, I think I must point out before I forget, it's in harmony because the people on both sides are making it work for me. It's not my doing. It's just that at home and at work, I got people who are making things easy for me. So my life
I think they're coordinating behind your back.
works well for me.
Wow. So first of all, Prashant, this has been absolutely amazing. Hearing your journey, hearing what you're accomplishing and accomplished, and where you're going has been tremendous. So much information and knowledge that not only myself am going to benefit tremendous amount, I'm sure everyone else. And I hope people take advantage and reach out to you more and more and more. Obviously, not to take away too much of your time, because you have so much to give, and so much to offer that people just got to take, and try to grab as much as possible. So, thank you so much for doing this and sharing with me and everyone else your knowledge and your advice and your story. Thank you.
My pleasure. You've been way too kind and generous with your comments. But I really enjoyed this conversation. Thanks for having me here.
Sure. Anytime. And it goes without saying, if there's anything I could do for you and your family, or for one MG or health card, please do not hesitate to reach out. Gladly, we love to give and help out any way possible.
Much appreciated, and same goes for you. If anything brings you to India, certainly let me know. Would love to meet in person if I get the opportunity.
Might be my pleasure. Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you. Bye bye.